All right, so are you ready to go beyond those typical touristy things about Sydney? Today, we're diving deep into Sydney, Australia. And I mean, really getting past those picture-perfect postcards you see everywhere. You know what I mean? We're going way beyond the Opera House and the Harbour Bridge to uncover those little things that make Sydney so unique. Those things that make it feel like it hums with a different kind of energy. We've been digging through all these articles and city guides, and let me tell you, they are just packed with interesting little details about Sydney, stuff you just wouldn't find in those typical tourist guides.
It's really amazing how Sydney has these world-famous landmarks, but then right next to them there are these hidden alleys and little places with stories you just won't find in those guidebooks. And the backdrop of it all is just incredible nature.
Yeah, you're right. It's like layers upon layers. And even that Sydney Opera House, I mean, who doesn't love the building, right?
Yeah.
But like you're saying, it's so much more than just a pretty picture.
Oh, absolutely. For one, it's actually one of only a few UNESCO World Heritage Sites
Yeah.
that were named that while the person who made them was still alive. It's incredible. And when you think of the Opera House, don't just picture the building itself. Try to imagine those incredible opera singers, the ballet dancers, the energy at a live concert, all of it echoing out over the harbor. That building is alive with artistic expression.
And then, of course, there's that other landmark that just screams, Sydney, the Harbour Bridge. You know what I love about it?
What's that?
The nickname, the coat hanger. It's so quirky. Don't you think that kind of sums up that Australian spirit? It's approachable,
Yeah.
laid back.
Yeah, definitely. And you can actually walk or ride your bike across the Harbour Bridge. You don't have to climb to the top.
No.
But I've heard the view from up there is pretty amazing.
I bet. Okay, so we've talked about these iconic landmarks, but our sources all talk about how much nature is a part of Sydney. I mean, Bondi Beach, right? You say Sydney, and that's one of the first images that pops into your head. Those golden sands and the surfers. There's a reason it's world famous.
Yeah, it really shows how important being outdoors is to people in Sydney. But here's something interesting. Imagine leaving the crowds at Bondi Beach and going to the Royal Botanic Garden. It's so peaceful and quiet, right in the middle of everything.
Yeah.
And from those gardens, you get these incredible views of the Opera House and the harbor, all framed by trees and flowers.
It's like finding a secret spot in a city already famous for its amazing views. And speaking of hidden gems, we have to talk about the Rocks, this historic part of Sydney with those cobblestone streets and colonial buildings and those little pubs. It's like stepping back in time.
I know, right? Sydney's history goes way back. It was founded in 1788 as a British colony. And the Rocks is where you can really feel that connection to the past.
You know, it's important to remember that as we walk through the Rocks imagining what it was like back then, this story started long before 1788. I mean, this land holds the history and the echoes of the Gadigal people. They are the traditional custodians of this land. And you can't really understand Sydney without understanding their story.
You're so right. To truly get Sydney, you have to understand the Gadigal people's story. It adds such a depth and understanding. Recognizing that their culture continues today is so important, and paying respect to them is essential. Their story is woven into the very fabric of this city, and, their presence is everywhere, like even in just everyday life in the city.
And speaking of daily life, you know what I found so interesting in these articles? The Sydney Fish Market. Okay, so picture this. You're a seafood lover, and you walk into this market that is just overflowing with fresh catches. It's a classic Sydney experience.
It really is. It's way more than just a place to buy fish, though. It's the whole experience. Imagine the smell of the sea in the air, seagulls flying around, prawns seriously the size of your hand,
Okay, wait, stop. Now I'm getting hungry.
and oysters being shucked right there in front of you. It's like a party for your senses. It's a real taste of how amazing the food scene is in Sydney.
Yeah, you know, it really makes you realize how connected Sydney is to the ocean. I mean, we talked about Bondi Beach, but this is where you really feel it.
Exactly. And it's a working market. It's where restaurants get their food and a favorite spot for locals. You're not just watching, you're a part of it.
This is what I love about doing these deep dives with you. We're getting past those touristy things to discover the heart of a place.
And those layers are what make a city really come alive.
Yeah.
The history, the culture, the people, all mixed in with the geography, the sights, the smells.
It's true. Sydney is like this incredible mix of experiences waiting to be discovered.
And speaking of experiences, we can't forget about Vivid Sydney. Close your eyes and picture the whole city lit up with these light displays. The Opera House is glowing, the Harbour Bridge is just shining with color.
That sounds magical, like something out of a dream.
It's really incredible to see in person, and really shows how creative Sydney is, how much they love art and pushing the boundaries. But Vivid Sydney isn't the only festival that shows off the spirit of the city. There's also the Sydney Festival, celebrating the performing arts, and Mardi Gras, which is this incredible explosion of color and self-expression. And then there's Sculpture by the Sea. They turn the coastline into this outdoor art gallery.
Wow, sculpture by the sea. That's amazing. It's like the city is saying, we're not just about pretty buildings and beaches, we are all about creativity too. Okay, so we've talked about these famous landmarks, those incredible natural wonders, the arts, the food. What would you say ties it all together? What makes Sydney stand out as a travel destination for you?
I think it goes back to that balance we were talking about before.
Yeah.
Sydney somehow manages to have this urban excitement while still feeling relaxed and close to nature. They have amazing food and art and entertainment, but then you also have these perfect beaches and parks and that relaxed Aussie way of life. It's a city that really lets you do your own thing.
I love that. It's like the city is saying, come as you are, you'll find your place here.
That's exactly it. And that's so great, whether it's your first time traveling or you've been all over. Sydney has something for everyone, and it lets you enjoy it your way. But like we've been saying, to really get Sydney, you have to look past those first impressions. You have to dig a little deeper and learn about the people who've called this place home for thousands of years.
Yeah, it's like we started with these simple ideas about Sydney, but then we peeled them back to find this incredible mix of cultures and experiences.
Yeah, and right at the heart of it all is the story of the Gadigal people. They're the traditional custodians of this land, the land Sydney was built on. We can't talk about really experiencing Sydney without talking about their connection to this place.
For sure. Our sources mention them, but I think it's important to say that this isn't just about adding something to a history tour. It's about realizing that their story is a part of everything in Sydney, from the harbor to the Blue Mountains.
You're absolutely right. Understanding and respecting Indigenous culture should be something every visitor thinks about. It helps you understand the city's past, present, and future.
So, say someone is listening and thinking, I want to experience that. I want to learn more. Where do they even start?
Well, there are a few ways to really connect with Indigenous culture. A great place to start is finding tours led by Indigenous guides. You'll hear stories from their perspective, learn about their traditions, and really feel their connection to the land. And there are some amazing galleries and cultural centers where you can see Indigenous art. It's so powerful and moving, unlike anything you've seen before.
I think it's about coming to a new place with an open mind and an open heart. Taking the time to really listen to and learn from the people who have been here for generations.
Yes, exactly. It's about realizing that Sydney's story is made up of many different stories. The Gadigal people's history and culture are so important to Sydney, and they add a richness that you won't find in any guidebook.
I love that. You know, this deep dive hasn't just shown us all these amazing things about Sydney. It's reminded us that travel isn't just about checking things off a list. It's about opening ourselves up to new ways of seeing things, new stories, and understanding the world better.
And maybe even changing how we see the places we think we already know.
Exactly. So for our listener who is probably already planning their trip to Sydney, what's the one thing you hope they remember from what we talked about today?
I hope they go to Sydney, ready to be curious and amazed, ready to explore beyond the obvious, to walk through the rocks, and not just see those old buildings, but to imagine the Gadigal people who walked there long ago, to enjoy a meal at the Sydney Fish Market, really experiencing the sights, the smells, the energy of a place so close to the ocean. And most importantly, to listen to the stories all around them, the stories in the land, the stories waiting to be discovered. That's the heart of Sydney.
That's beautiful. It's about embracing those unexpected moments, the hidden gems, the things that take your breath away. It's about finding the soul of a city, maybe even learning a little bit about yourself along the way. So until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.